In this video, I'm going to show you how I got my MyQ garage door to work with Home Assistant. Probably like most people these days, I have a MyQ garage door opener which does not integrate with Home Assistant because it is a closed system. On top of that, the app itself has not been working for me lately. It just spins and spins and spins and spins, and I cannot control my garage door with it. So let me show you what I did to get my MyQ garage door opener integrated into my Home Assistant setup. To start with, I installed one of these Z-Wave garage door sensors, so I always knew whether the door was open or closed. And then I purchased all of these items to hack together a remote-controlled garage door opener, something I can control through the Z-Wave relay through my Home Assistant setup. Before we take everything apart to put things back together again and make the magic happen, I needed to program this remote to my garage door opener. So step one, before we take anything apart, is to program the remote so it works for your garage door. Just follow the instructions that come in the package. Alright, and one final test to make sure everything works as expected before I take apart this garage door remote. At this point, I wasn't sure how everything would fit together in my container box, so I decided to pair the Z-Wave relay with my Home Assistant as well, just to be ready to go. I powered the Z-Wave relay at this point through a USB-C power plug and paired it with my Home Assistant. And once that was all done, I was ready to start putting together the relay setup to control the garage door remote. Interestingly enough, when I first paired the Z-Wave device, nothing showed up in the controls, but a quick refresh fixed that for me. And here you finally see the wiring diagram of how all of this is coming together. On the bottom left is the 12-volt power supply, which supplies power to the Z-Wave relay. From there, the 12 volts will go into the buck converter, converted down to 3 volts, which will then power the garage door remote. And finally, the button that I programmed on the remote gets controlled by the relay through the orange wires. Here, it doesn't matter which way you wire the buttons because the relay will simply close the circuit, and that's all it takes to push the button. In the comments below, I have linked all the products that I used for this project, so you can go ahead and build this yourself. And if you think there is a better way of doing this, please leave it in the comments below and let me know, because I'm always looking for ways to improve and make things better. And it's finally time to figure out how to put all this together. So the first thing I did was remove the cover from the garage door remote opener. I decided to leave the circuit board attached to the back piece because it was fairly securely attached, and it would give me a place for some double-sided tape on the back to place it into the box that you see on the bottom right of the screen right now. And just to be honest with you, even though I had purchased this box a week or two before, I had never opened it, so I had no idea what was inside. I knew there was some things rattling, but I didn't know what came with the box. So here I go, opening up the box to see how all my components would ultimately fit inside of it. The one thing I wasn't sure was how to mount the relay inside the box. It clearly did not fit upside down like this, which would allow me access to the Z-Wave link button as well as the terminal screws for the different terminals on the relay. So I realized I had to lay it flat, which meant I had to wire everything together before things went in the box. There was enough space on the side then for the garage door remote, and enough space for the buck converter as well. So everything fit together nicely in this little box, and I was really happy with the purchase I made because when I first bought this on Amazon, I had no idea how all of this would fit together. Now it was time to start soldering. Now I haven't soldered in quite some time and I have never been really good at it, so bear with me. First thing I did was remove the battery so I had access to the terminals for the wires that will ultimately feed the power to the garage door remote. I wanted this to be batteryless, so I wanted this to run off of the buck converter, which is fed through the 12 volt power supply, which is running off the mains power on the wall. So here I am just doing some very amateur soldering. To give me enough space for the negative terminal, I had to bend the positive terminal just a little bit. So I have enough space for my wire to be soldered to the negative terminal on the circuit board. And to stay with convention, to keep things simple and for me to know what's going on, and for anyone else who ever looks into this box, a red wire goes to the positive terminal and a black wire goes to the negative terminal. At this point, I decided it was a good idea to see if this would actually work. So I wired the power connector and the buck converter to the appropriate terminals on the relay. So the red wires go in V plus and the black wires both go in V minus. What I wanted to make sure was that the buck converter is actually working and converting things down to 3 volts. Now it's time to power things up and check the voltage coming out of the buck converter. One thing I also wanted to make sure was that the white wire was the positive terminal and the black wire was the negative terminal. So I go back and forth here with my voltmeter to make sure that I get the proper wires attached later on to the garage door remote. Finally, it was time to test the garage door remote and figure out which terminals on the buttons I had to jump with the relay. So I wired everything together and I had 3 volts coming to the garage door remote. All I had to do was jump the button, and I'm going out here to check if my garage door is actually opening and closing, which it did. So I now had the right voltage going to the garage door remote, and I figured out which terminals on the button I had to send through my relay later on to be able to control this garage door remote. Now that I had figured out which terminals of the button I needed to jump with the relay, all I had to do was attach some cables to the terminals on the circuit board, which then later would be connected to relay 1 for me on the Z-Wave remote. Although you could choose a different button on the relay, that really doesn't matter. Both of these wires are orange. The polarity here doesn't matter because the relay simply closes the circuit, and that's all that needs to happen for the button press to be simulated. I also added some simple disconnects to the power cables that go to the garage door remote. That way, if I ever needed to change my setup or the garage door remote breaks for whatever reason, I can replace it more easily. And finally, it's time to put everything together into the box. The hole for the power supply was about 3/8 of an inch. I had to make it just a touch larger. That was the only drill bit size I had that came close. So I ended up filing that hole a little bit to make the plug fit. Then everything was wired together. I attached everything into the box with some double-sided Gorilla Tape. That box will never move, so I think that was secure enough. There probably are better ways of doing it, but for my purposes, I think that was more than sufficient. There are probably many ways of doing this. This is just the way I decided to go about it. I created a script in Home Assistant that turned the relay on, waits a second, and then turns the relay off again to simulate a 1 second long button press. And with that, I now had a script that whenever run through Home Assistant, whether through an automation or a button on my dashboard, it simulates a button press on the garage door remote. One thing I wanted to do was to have a button on my security dashboard that not only shows me whether the garage is open or closed, but also activates the script. This way, other people in the household can easily open and close the garage door. I used a custom button card for this. The entity to choose is the garage door sensor. That way, if the garage is open, the button will say close garage, and if the garage is closed, it will say open garage. Of course, the call service is to the script we just created to simulate the push on the garage door remote button. The label and icon will take some logic reasoning here so that when the garage door is open, it will say close garage, and if the garage door is closed, it will say open garage. The same thing happens for the icon. There's a different icon whether the garage door is open or closed to indicate which state the garage is currently in and what needs to happen. And with all that, I now have a button on my dashboard that shows an open garage if the garage is open, and a closed garage if the garage is closed. It also changes the label. It says closed garage, as you can see here, when the garage is open. And now that the garage is closed, it shows a closed garage with a label to open it. And with all that, I now have this rather unassuming black box sitting in my garage that is controlling my garage door opener through Home Assistant in ways that MyQ was never able to. What do you think I did well? What do you think I could have done better? Leave it in the comments below. One thing I know for sure I want to do is add some ventilation to this box. Even though it is running on low voltage, I do want to add some ventilation to make sure nothing in there overheats. But what else could I have done differently? I'm not an electrical engineer, so leave it in the comments below what could be done differently, what could be done better. And thank you for watching.